Hey, how we doing everyone? Welcome back. So today we're going to be checking out, well, perhaps some of the worst riding that I've ever seen, but that might sound a little bit harsh because a lot of these things are very genuine mistakes that a lot of newer riders will genuinely make. But they've recorded it, they've put it on TikTok, and we're going to laugh at them. Let's check it out. This accident happened 2 months into getting a bike. This, I think, is one of those mistakes that you wouldn't have seen coming unless you have got a few years riding under your belt. Let's check it out. So everything's looking alright so far. Hey! Oh, the throttle's stuck on as well. Oh, that smoke! Oh, God. Poor bike. Yep, that is one of the first things that you should always do if the bike falls over. Most bikes these days, they do have an auto cutoff, so they recognize when they're on their sides. And, well, if a bike is on its side and it's still running, it can be starved of oil, and so that's why you really don't want it running when it's on its side. But most of the time, they turn themselves off. If they don't, or the throttle gets stuck, in this instance, yeah, just hit that kill switch, or even just turn it off at the ignition. That'll probably save the bike. But yeah, the fact that this has nearly happened to me as well on a number of occasions, where you pull up on the side of the road, you think that, I don't know, you've got enough room on the one side to put your foot down, or you're tall enough, should I say, to put your foot down on that one side, and you're not, and the bike starts tipping over in that same direction. Happens to, I think, the best of us, to be honest with you. Especially if you are a shorter person. I mean, I'm 5'11", thereabouts. But if you're riding a taller bike, then yeah, obviously that's going to make this a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more likely to happen, shall we say. So I suppose then, what do you do in this scenario? I personally, there isn't much you can do about it because you're not really thinking about it. And especially if you're just a couple months into riding, you're going to be thinking more about riding the bike itself than most other things going on around you. But to be honest with you, just don't pull over by the side of the road as close as this person did. Make sure that if you have to put your foot down somewhere where the bike stops, it is also on tarmac. And then that should help you out. That should stop this kind of stuff from happening. Let's check out the next one. Okay, I don't like this one because this is very familiar territory for me, and after we watch this, some of you lot are going to know what I'm on about. Here we go.
You want to take a nap?
I'm taking a nap here.
Okay, take a nap right there. Good night.
Yeah, so that's one thing that happens when you're traveling quite slowly. You have the front brake applied, and, well, the bike at any moment, whenever it's tilting to one side or the other, if you have a brake on, especially the front brake, the likelihood that it's just going to stop and then fall in that direction, the direction that it's leaning, is very, very high. So you've got to try and straighten up that bike as quickly as you can. If you're going round a corner or something like that, and you're not going very fast, and you're trying to apply the brakes, you've got to make sure you stand the bike up. That's exactly the same thing that happens whenever someone is going too fast around a bend, and then they try to put on the brakes, but they know that they're not going to get the best braking force if they're leaning over, so they stand the bike up to get the most amount of pressure over that front wheel. But of course, at that point, they're not making the bend. They're going in a straight line. So kind of like the opposite here. Well, opposite, I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. But yeah, this exact same thing happened to me when I was doing a U-turn tutorial on my ZH2. Do I have to replay it? Oh, here we go. But that's the thing, that's what you're looking to try and do. When you're doing this, of course, you have to turn the handlebars more to get that turning circle. If you turn them half and half, yeah, you're going to be able to keep your balance better, but you're never going to make the turn. So you have to get confident in turning the bike lock to lock when you're doing, say, less than 5 miles an hour. And that is by no means an easy thing to do, because you've got to be able to feather that clutch to get yourself moving forward, to keep yourself balanced. Because if I try turning in with the clutch closed, eventually what's going to happen, shit, is that I can't believe that. Oh my god. Oh wow, that is incredible. Oh dearie me. What an arsehole. What an idiot. Oh god, so embarrassing. Yeah, painful one. So I think, yeah, when you're traveling at a slower speed, just try and make sure you keep the bike as upright as possible, and then you'll be okay. Use the handlebars more when you're traveling at slower speeds. When you're traveling at, I don't know, 10 mile an hour or so, even faster, you can really then start to use the lean of the bike to turn yourself around. But whenever you're traveling at slower speeds, try and keep the bike as upright as possible. There are some people that are very skilled where they know exactly the tipping point of the bike as they're going around in a... like if they're doing a U-turn or something like that, and they're going at very slow speeds trying to get the tightest corner possible, they do have a little bit of lean there as well. But these guys are insanely skilled, and for the most part, if you are a beginner rider, then yeah, just try and keep the bike as upright as possible and use the steering as much as you can. Alright, let's check out the next one. Ouch. Man. They've even seen the camera in the car. Are they still driving? Okay, so this isn't the rider's fault. This person has, well, come out of this junction whilst the rider is on approach. You can't really tell what speed this rider's doing, but slow down a little bit, especially when there's a junction coming up and you see cars that are trying to get out. The amount of times that they don't see you is insane. So just slow down as you're approaching these junctions, and you should be okay. It should give you plenty of time to slow down, and then, or at least maybe even get around the car that's coming out of the junction, something like that. You have options, but at this point you're going so fast and you have so little braking distance that you're simply not going to make it in time, and the thing that's going to stop you is the car. So just on approach, whenever you see a car that's approaching a junction and you're on approach to it, take your hand off the throttle, put your fingers on the brake, just ready to go. And if you have to brake in emergency brake, you have time to use progressive braking, because what you're trying to do is stop the brakes from locking up, and that is how you do it. That's the best way to do it, progressive braking. If you're jamming on that front brake straight away, the bike isn't going to slow down, it's just going to lock up, might dive towards the ground, or yeah, you're just going to keep on going. So yeah, just use progressive braking in this kind of situation and you'll be okay. But you have to give yourself a little bit of time to get into that position. Alright, let's check out the next clip.
This is why we filter. Don't stop on highways.
I don't know if you lot heard that,
Why we filter. Don't stop
but the car behind, the car behind locked up their brakes, locked up their tires, locked up their wheels. This kind of stuff happens so often. That's exactly why we filter, because if you're in between cars, then it means that if a car's going to rear end another one, they're not rear ending you, they're rear ending a car next to you. Filtering, guys, honestly, it really is it's something that you should do for your own safety, because this kind of stuff happens, unfortunately, far too much. Okay, yep. So here you go. There's some dark stuff on TikTok, man, honestly. So let's roll it back a little bit. Now, you can't see, unfortunately, as the bend is coming up, but they're not going that quickly, but it looks like they've misanticipated the sharpness of the bend. So they try turning into it, they totally miss the apex, and then by the time they realize they're not going to make that bend, they steer the bike upright to try and slow down even more, to try and get more of that brake pressure, as we mentioned earlier, but then they just end up veering off the road. And unfortunately, that is what happens. For the most part, a lot of riders would actually advise you to stay in the lean, and if anything, lean the bike over further and accelerate. Yeah, sounds crazy, but the further you lean over, the easier it is if you accelerate. So you accelerate a little bit more, but you're going to get more of a turning angle. And also as well, this person, you can't really see their eyes, but they're kind of, it looks like they're looking in the direction that they're going. Don't. Look at the direction you want to go. So you turn your head, you look towards either the apex of the bend or maybe even a landmark somewhere else a little bit further up the road. You turn your eyes towards that and you steer the bike towards where you're looking. More often than not, the bike is going to follow where your eyes are leading you. It's a really good tip, and it's something that isn't really said enough, I don't think. And even I forget about it as well whenever we do these kinds of videos or whenever we're doing tutorials about bikes or what have you. This kind of stuff does get missed quite a lot. It's actually quite funny that we mentioned this because there is a comment in there that says, definitely target fixation. Yeah, so they're looking towards where the bike is going and they don't want to go in that direction, but they can't help but look in that direction. Whereas what you want to do is be looking where you actually want to go. If you look in that direction, force yourself to look in that direction. Don't worry about what's happening over there. Force yourself to look in that direction and steer the bike accordingly. More often than not, it will get you out of there. But yeah, a lot of the time these things happen because the riders don't know how to make the bend. Yeah. And they're going pretty slow. It doesn't look like they're going that quick anyway. So this must be just a confidence thing. But yeah, honestly, just make sure you're looking where you want to go. Turn the bike in that direction. But if you're not confident and you're not really sure what I'm talking about when I say this, just slow down a little bit more. When you're approaching a bend, especially if it's on roads that you don't recognize, you know, have been down before, slow down a little bit more. Honestly, it makes your life so much easier. And if you're not that confident in leaning over the bike or something like that, or maybe you haven't had that much time in the saddle, then that's my best advice, the best advice I can give you. Sensitive content. Okay, here we go. Don't let him leave after an argument. Oh. Oh. Guys, that is absolutely brutal. I did say there was some brutal stuff on TikTok. I forgot I added this one. Jesus Christ. Don't leave him after an argument because he might not make it home. Jeez. That is, yeah. Absolutely brutal. And for the most part... there's so much of this kind of stuff on, not just on TikTok, but everywhere, on Instagram, on YouTube, all sorts. And unfortunately, it does kind of, it adds to the fear that people have around bikes. And yes, you are more vulnerable. And yes, if you get into a crash, you are more than likely going to sustain injuries. But most of these things, as we're going over today, can be avoided. So remember, the only time when you are in danger is if you get into a crash. If you don't get into a crash, then you'll be alright. But, I mean, as well, you should always wear your gear. I think this should go without saying these days, but unfortunately, too many people, they go out riding without their gear on. I know I'm guilty of it myself sometimes. But this entire year, throughout the whole summer, I wore all my gear every single day. And, you know, yeah, I know it's a little bit uncomfortable, and no, it's not always the most convenient thing to do, especially if you're just popping down to the shops or visiting family or friends, something like that. But just wear your gear, honestly, and that will, it's not going to save you if you get into a really bad crash, but it's more than likely going to help you with the slow speed stuff, so you don't get as injured. Let's check out the next clip. I love that. Participating in this activity could result in you or others getting hurt. Yeah, thanks TikTok. Green light, yeah, car coming out. Boop, and just kiss that other car. Yeah, I'm gonna turn down the volume for this one. I'm gonna replay it again so you guys can see it, just in case it gets flagged. So green light. The rider moves out and there's a car that... I don't know, there's a driver that is totally oblivious. It's probably the best way to describe it. I don't know about you guys, but this doesn't seem to happen as much here in the UK. People do run red lights, but not like that. At least I don't see it all that often. But you see a lot of these clips coming out of the US, and... Man, I mean, I know that the road rules are different in the US to over here, because I think if you're doing a right-hand turn, even if the light is red on your side, you can still turn right. I think because it's like a filter. Where that driver was in that right-hand lane, and I imagine they probably just got confused and thought, oh yeah, I'm turning right, but you're not. They were actually driving straight, if you know what I mean. So things like that, that's probably why you don't see it as much here in the UK, because that's not the case whatsoever. If it is a filter lane, then it's clearly marked as a filter lane and it's separate from traffic lights or separate from crossroads, junctions, things like that. But yeah, and everything is controlled by traffic lights as well here in the UK. Whether you're turning left or right doesn't really matter. Everything is controlled by traffic lights. So yeah, I can see this kind of thing happening, and this rider, to be fair, they did the right thing. They saw it in their peripheral vision that this car was just bombing it out of there. Well, they weren't really bombing it out of there. That's what I mean. I think they just got distracted or just weren't concentrating as much as they should have been, and this is just what happened. So this is why you got to keep out a really clear eye. And unfortunately, yeah, the driver to their right didn't really catch what was going on here. So, well, in fact, there was a bus. There's a bus on their left, so they might not have even seen this car coming out until it was too late. So, yeah. This kind of stuff happens, guys. You got to keep your eyes peeled. But once you get used to spotting this kind of stuff, it becomes like a skill and it becomes almost instinctive. All right, let's do one last clip today. Let's have a look. Bloody hell. Well, okay, do I have to say about what the issue is here? The issue is that the rider wasn't looking where they were going. They were going very quickly and they weren't watching where they were going. It's a very simple mistake to make, and unfortunately, again, it comes back to that target fixation. If you are focusing on something other than the riding, this is what's going to happen. Honestly, it's not rocket science at that point, and I think most of you already understand that. And I think it goes back to this same old thing where if a driver, something happens, they piss you off, just try not to react. First and foremost, just get out of there, make sure you're safe, and then afterwards, curse to yourself or something like that. Don't bother cursing at them, because they're never going to think they're in the wrong anyway. Now, we didn't actually see what happened beforehand, I don't think, to see why this rider decided to have a hissy fit. But yeah, and they're filtering as well in between cars at very high speed. That's such a bad idea. Don't do that either. But yeah, this rider's been totally, what's the word? Consumed by what this driver has done. Happens to the best of us, I'm not going to lie. It happens to me as well. But please just focus on the riding. First and foremost, focus on the riding. Focus on what you're doing. You'll be alright. Damn, this kind of stuff annoys me. Alright, one more. Let's do one more. Here we go. Gravel. Yeah. That's literally what happened to me and the wife a couple of weeks ago. We were out on the Daytona, and yeah, we going around a bend, hit some gravel, rear tire just went out a little bit, but got grip again. It's quite difficult to tell how fast these guys are going. They're probably going a little bit too quick, maybe. But it's funny they got this bear out here as well. Thankfully, due to his skill, he... what does that say? Thankfully, due to his skilled riding, he avoided. Okay. I don't quite understand what this clip is about, but clearly hit some gravel, something on the road where he lost a little bit of traction. Boff, there. Yeah. That kind of stuff, unfortunately, is very difficult to avoid. Riding over gravel, in essence, isn't really a big deal. You know, the riders that do off-roading all the time, not a big deal. The issue is when you've got different levels of grip on different surfaces. So you've got tarmac, very grippy, your tyres love it. Then all of a sudden they hit a little patch of gravel and it just acts like ice. And you can imagine like stones rolling over, the rolling stones, right? Stones rolling over as the tyre goes over them. And that's really where the danger is that the fact that your tyres have got grip 1 second and then lose grip the next. yeah, there's not a lot you can do in that situation. I mean, this rider, they stuck it out, and that's all you can do, really, is just try and stay in the bend and just hope that the tires will gain grip again. Because again, you're in a bend, you try straightening yourself up, the same thing's gonna happen like what we discussed before. You're gonna end up going, well, in this instance, into oncoming traffic. Impossible, absolutely impossible situation. What this rider did ended up putting them out into oncoming traffic. Imagine if there was a car coming the opposite direction, they'd be mincemeat. Yeah, man. Crazy. But to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of this stuff was the rider's fault, and in a lot of cases, it's not the worst ride I've ever seen. I've seen much worse than this. Not on TikTok. This is my first time on TikTok actually checking out some of the stuff that's there surrounding motorcycles. But hey, it is what it is, alright? This is what we do, and we accept the risk whenever we're riding our bikes. And remember, it's all a case of risk versus reward. So people think that the risk of riding bikes is too high because a lot of this stuff, 90%, 95% of riding isn't like this. Alright, and that's the thing you got to take away. There are lots of these videos, lots of these clips around, and I mean, you can say the same thing about cars as well. There's so many of these kinds of clips and things of cars and car crashes, things like that. It doesn't stop people from driving. You know what I mean? So I know that cars have got airbags and seatbelts, la-di-da-da, whatever. But at the same time, it's the only time this becomes an issue is if you crash. Right? If you are sensible, if you're a sensible rider, you won't have any of these problems. The worst that you'll get will be things like dropping the bike, things like silly mistakes that don't involve anything else. It's just a mistake that you make. If you ride steady, you ride well, and you're sensible, you have a clear head, you're thinking about what you're doing, you'll be absolutely fine, honestly. Don't let a lot of these clips kind of sway you the opposite way, because yeah, this kind of stuff happens. It could happen to anybody. But for the most part, you can hedge your bets if you are riding with a strict set of guidelines, strict set of rules and do's and don'ts, red lines, that you're not willing to cross. If you can kind of think of those in the back of your head, then you'll be all right. Seriously, a lot of this comes down to the rider, not what happens around you. A lot of these mistakes are rider error. Trust me, you watch any of these motorcycle fails, you watch any of these motorcycle crashes, more than half of them are because of the rider's actions. Alright, so if you keep that in mind, you'll be okay. Don't worry about it. But thank you so much for joining me on this little journey through some TikTok motorcycle fails. If you have enjoyed this one, and you are learning things as we go over these clips, then definitely go ahead, leave that like and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. It's been a little while since we've done a video like this, so yeah. And I think with the weather being the way it has been, with the thunderstorms and the flooding, I haven't really had much of a chance to get out anyway, so doing this kind of stuff is a little bit refreshing. But thanks again, take care, ride safe, we'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.